Dear friends, we are continuing our media marathon. It is the International Club of National Unity, jointly with STAS. We have the same participants here. The Pilgrim of the World, Pepe Escobar, ex-analyst with the CIA. Why do we use the prefix ex-analyst, Larry Johnson? We have Danny Haifong online. I think that some other participants will join us. And we have a legendary man with us who is legendary not only in Russia, but after your meetings with Larry Jones, you are known in other parts of the world. General Alaudinov, who is the chief of Ahmad Battalion. It is a heroic unit and it is a multinational unit, military unit, but at the same time, the name Ahmad is associated with Chechnya, with the name of Ahmad Haji Kadyrov, the first president of Chechnya, and this is why this unit has representatives from every ethnic group in Russia under the banner of Ahmad. And so this is where I'd like to stop and give the floor to our U.S. colleagues. Maybe Danny would have the chance to ask his question first.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure and honor to meet you, General Alaudinov. I want to ask you about the battlefield. How do you answer those in the West, those who watch my program, for example, who see Russia's advantages on the battlefield and ask, why not put an end to this conflict faster?
The question is very good. My answer to your audience would be as follows. Look here. When we were artificially driven to the point when we had to start the special military operation, we said that we were not fighting against Ukrainian people. This war has been drawing on for almost 4 years, and this war is a result of the policy that has been pursued by the NATO bloc during the recent decades. The United States and other countries, NATO member states under its aegis, have been moving closer to our borderline, to the borderline of Russia. Vladimir Putin, as early as in 2007, delivered his famous Munich speech, where he asked where he asked NATO to stop that movement and not to violate the treaties that were signed when Germany unification agreement was reached. So it was his first appeal so that we could avoid the point in time when a face-to-face standoff would be inevitable. And when you ask this question why we could not put an end to the special military operation more quickly, you need to understand that it was not us who initiated the conflict, and we cannot put an end to it when our interests, the interests that we were defending for 4 years, are not yet met. We cannot put an end to this conflict because in this case, this conflict would be stopped, but temporarily. And this would mean that this would be some breathing space for Ukraine and for the West to deliver more weapons to Ukraine. And we are aware that the same NATO bloc would fight against us again, would wage a war against us again. So we'll move forward, we'll move towards achieving our strategic goals. It is no secret to anyone. When there were initial appeals for a peace deal made by our Western opponents, the initial statements were as follows. For example, when we look look at the Istanbul processes in Turkey, where we held our initial negotiations, we said that there were 4 regions that had already become Russian territories. Well, we need to close off this matter. We have enough land. Russia is one of the richest countries in the world, and we have 140 million people, and we occupy 1/6 of the land on this planet of land, and we have a lot of land. We are self-sufficient. We have everything, but we had to allow those 4 regions to join Russia so that we could actually stop NATO from moving closer to Russia, because NATO ended up being at a distance of 5 kilometers away from Moscow. Any medium-range missiles can strike Moscow if we gave them, could strike Moscow if we gave them an opportunity to move closer. To be protected, we had to have that buffer zone that would not be part of the NATO bloc. Hence a question, when we have spent so many resources, once NATO has spent so much, given that Ukrainians have lost so many soldiers, and when we know that we are actually capable to win a victory, why should we agree to stop after an initial appeal? It would be similar to death. We are aware of it. Russian resources are big. When the special military operation was started, everyone was confident that thanks to the that were trained and prepared by those companies who financed those who wanted to destroy Russia from the inside. We know how much money was invested in Navalny and his network. They were counting on Russia imploding. And you remember that previous presidents declared that one of the presidents said that the Russian economy was torn apart into pieces, and some other president announced that Russia was on its knees and would not be able to survive. But the Navalny ring was torn into pieces. They were not able to do anything. And now we are standing strong, and we are united to defend ourselves against our enemies. And I think we'll keep going until we have achieved our strategic goals. And we do not want to wage a war with anyone. And we are not a country that aimed at starting a war. But as long as we were led to it, then sorry, we'll have to achieve goals. We cannot go back. With your permission, I'd like to add a few words to follow up on and build up on Danny's question. His subscribers, if my understanding is correct, are asking why our pace is so slow. Well, I can answer that question as well. The forms and methods of conducting military operations have changed. It was a long time ago. Today, the principal focus at the front line on the battlefield is on drones. And if in the past we used to use tanks, cannons, and artillery and manpower, today offensive operations of this kind lead to big casualties and losses, and therefore our task is to spare lives. We do not want huge casualties, because this is something that would play against us. The strategy of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation changed in unison with the format of conducting military activities. We are actually trying to destroy our enemy's resources along the entire line of contact. Otherwise, how could we resist and how could we deal with resources that have been invested into Ukraine by NATO? We need to carefully watch Ukrainian and our casualties and our losses, and eventually we can see that the European economy of those states who decided to have a standoff with us, the economies are torn apart, and as our enemies, they have to understand that they would not be in position to win a victory over Russia on a battlefield. And we can say with every confidence that Russia would never be left alone unless until they disintegrate Russia or until we conquer our enemies. And all European leaders and even American leaders used to say it is only a military victory that would be a solution. Hence, there is a question. If we are looking at NATO resources that are not currently used, and there are lots of resources left, and we cannot be in a hurry. We are a most combat-ready force, and in many respects, we are much superior compared to any potential opponent. And if we look at NATO, our superiority is very big compared to NATO. If you look at your air carriers and at your squadrons who could actually go to any state and destroy it and level it to the ground, now you do not have that advantage, that edge, because we have weapons that cannot be counteracted or intercept. You cannot intercept our zircons, you cannot intercept our kinzhals, and a strike of by a zircon or a kinzhal is so strong that any air carrier will be sunk. And hence there is a question that I raised before. Today, we should not be duped that we are waging a war against Ukraine. You, as citizens of those states whose audiences are watching us today, need to understand it is your states who are waging a proxy war against us by Ukraine. And there is a question to each citizen of your states. I asked this question before. We are ready to fight till the end, and if needed, we will eat grass, but will wage that war until the end. Are you ready, given the present-day capabilities of the Russian Federation, to transform this war into a world war using weapons available to us? Are you ready to enter that war and feel that war and die, says Alexander? And another question, are you capable to conduct combat missions like we are? And I am a good analyst. No, maybe not as good as Larry Johnson, but I am a good analyst. Your peoples are not ready to wage that war. They're not ready for such combat missions compared to us. Please note that throughout these 4 years, we conducted only one mobilization, and we mobilized only 300,000 people. And our mobilization resource is still untapped. And hence, there is a question to those who are asking us why our pace is kind of slow and we are not advancing forward at a faster pace, because we know the enemies whom we see face to face. There is NATO standing behind our enemies whom we are facing. And when there are these performances and games played, when people are trying to replace Zelensky's team, in order to have them replaced and then make us stop short, there are unilateral attempts to persuade us to negotiate. We are no fools we understand why it is being done. And that's why people who are listening to us now, we may tell you that strategically our today's combat strategy is justified given the current environment, given the modern warfare. We gradually, step by step, we are destroying our enemies gradually and step by step without excessive casualties, because we need combat experienced soldiers. Because if you want to enter into a conflict with us, we need to resist you with full force. I'm not hypocritical. I do not wear two masks. I'm not double-faced. Sorry, as opposed to the majority of Western politicians. This is my face, and I'm speaking my mind. We are ready for any war. We are ready for any events that may be imposed on us in the future. Therefore, we will battle using such methods that are appropriate to minimize our casualties. And you should not urge us on. We should not. There is no hurry for us.
Well, actually, I have more of a tactical question. Was it your idea, or was it one of your subordinates that came to you and said, hey, we have this gas pipeline that runs 13 kilometers up in the Suja. Now, it's only 1.5 meters wide, but we can get there. But we're going to have to march hunched over for 13 kilometers, carrying rifle and ammunition, which carries some weight. When you first, if you came up with that plan, did your subordinates go, are you crazy? Or when you heard it, did you say, that's an interesting one? Could you just speak to that a little bit? Because it is one of the more remarkable accomplishments, I think, not just in this war, but in military history.
Well, look here. I'd like you to hear the following message. The idea to use this to implement this operation, it is about 16 kilometers long. It is 3 kilometers long. This idea was generated, and by the way, we call this project FLOW. And this was an idea generated by another team known as other unit known as Veteran, and there was a commander whose nickname was ex-Marine, and we agreed with them. And by the way, they started before us, and we decided not to interfere because it is their area of expertise. They are professionals in the area. They have experts. They have equipment. They can do that professionally. But once the pipeline was ready, there was a question raised: who would be capable to do that? And it turned out that, morally and psychologically, it was the Ahmad unit and Regiment 30. It was Platoon B, and our soldiers spent 6 days in that pipeline waiting for the entire manpower to be inside the pipeline. And then they started the operation. Those who prepared that pipe did a phenomenal job. Actually, the job that was done so well, and they actually pumped air, and there were special solutions when they under the pipeline, and they actually enabled drone operators to manage the drones. And my soldiers spent 6 days in that pipe, and that's why they were at the forefront. The other soldiers were later, and when everyone was inside, there was a go-ahead order. Ahmad and Regiment 30, Platoon B, was the first, and they occupied Kubatkin. They took bridges, and the rest followed us, and we moved in the direction of Suja. So basically, thanks to the fact that our mission was performed, let's put it this way, in a secret and a very confidential manner. It was top secret, and our enemies had to escape, and they ran away, and they left their positions, and we had to intercept them, and we had to chase them in some cases. So this is the story about the pipe. I'd like to, it is not a question, but I'd like to add a comment for the audience. This pipe was used by Russian forces to go from the Russian territory across the front line, and they ended up in the rear of our enemy. And we actually moved about 12 or 13 kilometers inside our enemy's territory. And we were close to the contact line, to the front line, and we were deep into the rear.
Let me just, his answer illustrates why he's the kind of man that he is. Now, I've been around enough military officers over on the U.S. side, and I worked with some at State Department. And I remember a friend of mine was the one that came up with the idea of putting matchbook covers for the wanted poster for Ramzi Youssef, who bombed the First World Trade Center. And when initially the commanding officer said, "Oh, that's a terrible idea. We're not going to do that." But then when the Congress said, "Oh, this is brilliant," that man said, "I did that. That was my decision." Notice what General Alaudinov said. He didn't take credit for himself. He assigns the credit to others, recognizes what others, doesn't put himself to the front to say, "Look at what a great man I am," because he knows he is a great man, but he leads by example. And that's what makes Ahmad great. You lead by example.
Я солдат.
I am a soldier.
Я солдат.
I am a soldier.
И это звучит с большой буквы.
And this is a word with a capital letter.
Da. Da.
Так, Пепе, есть какие-то вопросы?
Pepper, do you have any questions to ask?
A very simple one. Thank you, General. Where should the SMO end? Odessa?
Odessa, you said?
Odessa.
Ну, если наш враг по сути своей
If
изначально,
our
когда были
enemy,
условия, когда он мог
when
отдать те территории, которые
it had a chance to give away the 4 Russian regions those regions were made part of Russia because we did not have other choice, other option. The sooner our enemies agreed to our terms and conditions, the more beneficial it would be for them. Today, we are considering Odessa, Nikolaev, and their regions, and the territory that leads to those Transnistria regions where Transnistria citizens are living, and 80% of them hold Russian passports. We need to build a bridge to our citizens who reside there. This is in case NATO that props up the Ukrainian government with its guns. If it keeps resisting till the end, we would have to take that territory. And as a maximum goal, why should we give American billionaires like Soros an opportunity, who, by the way, he openly declared that he had spent $1 billion to arrange a coup in Ukraine, and he was counting on earning $5 billion. These are not our words. There was Yanukovych, who was publicly elected. He was thrown by the United States, by America. And why did they do that? They did it to actually capture resources. It was Nuland who openly admitted it, and Soros did not mince matters. He openly said that. Hence there is a question: why should we give an opportunity to our enemies who orchestrated that coup? Why should we give them a chance to line up their pockets at the expense of Russian people who are close to us and much closer? These are Russian territories. There are Russian people living there. And of course, we are going to fight until all truly Russian territories are made part of Russia and come back home. Why? I can give you an answer to that. The territory that is not returned by Russia would be used by NATO in the future and by the deep state that governs America and Europe. And that territory would be used by them for confrontation with neighbors. Why should we allow them to do that? Globally, there are hybrid wars that are ongoing. Each country, and its deep state in particular, has a very good program how to conduct such hybrid wars. And of course, everything that we feel across the board, in every sphere, in politics, geopolitics, economics, we feel that very much. We can say that today we, as a single state, are having a standoff with a large group of states who have joined their resources join their forces to conquer us, to take away our resources. What is a war in the model world? Each war has economy standing behind it. Economy. Who needs that? The deep state. Therefore, billionaires from the United States and European countries have joined the efforts to take away our resources. Let's put it in a straightforward way. Not because you dislike us because of our skin color or our height. It is the economy. It is economic considerations and geopolitics that stand behind each war. Today is the third millennium, and the world is being redivided. And at the very onset of the third millennium, there was an agreement to redivide the world. And of course, the United States believe that it would continue to be a global policeman. But we see, and the history has proven it, that any state has its growth period, its peak period, and its downward spiral. And the events that are taking place in the United States, I think that you are already on the downward path. There was a peak when you were number one and you were the global ruler. You launched wars wherever you wanted. America initiated so many wars and killed so many people that no one can compete with you in this respect. And hence there is a question. Thank God Russia today is led by such a great man as Vladimir Putin. It is a God's gift to the Russian people. If not for him, Russia would cease to exist would have ceased to exist a long time ago. Since he managed to unite Russia and he managed to be an opponent to the deep state, and we started the war, there is no need for us to stop. Either we have a multipolar world and we'll put an end to all the wars, or eventually we'll have a war that is described in every holy book, in all scriptures. And as I have already said, we do not have a task to stop short and wait for you to strike us. Our task is to achieve the goals that would enable us to make sure that there are no future strikes against us. These are the basics.
Thanks. I think, Danny, do you have another
Danny,
question?
у вас
I think it's frozen.
Or is
Do
he
you have
frozen?
another question, Danny?
Maybe he's frozen. You know,
Я тогда добавлю, пока
Now, I'll add a few words to build up on what Comrade General has said. I'll quote our Commander-in-Chief, Vladimir Putin, who at one of WWII forums, in response to a question from a Hungarian political scientist, said, Odessa is a Russian city. Of course. Truth.
History proves it.
yeah. Danny, are you back with us, or? Nope, I guess he's frozen. Yeah, so let me go back to this, the issue of the pace of the war. Because as I started looking, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, we're all geniuses. Or at least I can look smart. And it dawned upon me that, you know, as you mentioned, it was only in September of, you know, the initial assault was with around 125,000 troops across a 1,000-mile line of contact. Well, if you go back to the Great Patriotic War, just around Stalingrad, which was 35 kilometers from north to south, there was about 1 million soldiers. So 125,000 is nothing. Then Russia mobilized the 320,000 reservists. But just because you mobilize somebody doesn't mean they don't need to go through training. Just to remember, you know, how to properly handle the firearm, how to move as a unit, how to, and then the other higher skills that came on board with coordinating artillery, coordinating drone strikes, being, you know, this full net-centric battlefield. I mean, that's nothing, you don't just get to play a video game to learn that. And it suddenly, I think I realized, it wasn't until this year that the full buildup of the Russian army, that they had finally achieved a level with 750,000 soldiers roughly deployed, that now you can conduct operations not just in Donetsk, but in Zaporizhia, in Kherson, in Dnipropetrovsk, in Kharkiv, which is in fact what we're seeing. We're seeing now an offensive across the line of contact that, in my view, is overwhelming the Ukrainian forces. You know, I'm not great at math, but I can do addition. The Russian Ministry of Defense reports roughly 40,000 Ukrainian casualties per month. And then on top of that, even Western sources admit between 20 and 40,000 desertions. So let's go with the lower number. No army in the world can lose 60,000 people a month when they're only recruiting maybe 25,000 and remain a viable force. So I'm not asking you to be a predictor, you know, a prophet. But if, you know, looking at it from a strategic and tactical standpoint, what would you say to those analysts in the West who say, oh, this is a stalemate, this can go on for years?
я им могу ответить.
I
Как
can
только
tell them
за
that
Украину
once
перестанут их подпирать,
Ukraine is not propped up by NATO guns, it is not a stalemate. It would be a capitulation of Ukraine, surrender. And if we keep hearing from US and German presidents and other European countries and France, Poland, who say that they will have to prepare to wage a war against Russia in 2029. No, it will be in 2027. When we hear such statements, we understand that those people do not care at all how many people die in that war. They cannot care less. They have goals and objectives, and they understand that if they stop today, the governments, the states would cease to exist the way we've known them, because the economy of those those countries, if we look at Germany, the German economy is torn apart because thousands of plants have ceased to exist. They stopped their production, things that the whole world needed. Germany stopped getting cheap energy resources that it used to get from Russia. So it means that the European economy has been torn apart, and it was closely interlaced. And of course, they need a bogeyman, as someone like Russia, to say, oh, they're going to attack us. And hence there is a question, why do you deceive your own population? Why are you telling tales that Russia wants to attack someone? Russia wants to be left alone. We have sufficient land. But Russia says that if you do not leave us alone, then we will remind you what happened to Napoleon, who came to Moscow, and Moscow was burned down to the ground so that he could not have any food and no heating. And what did we do with his army? We actually crossed the Alps, and we ended up in his home, and we put our flag where he thought he was the landlord. Germans repeated that. The fascist Germany decided to win, to conquer the Soviet Union, and they were close to Moscow. What happened to them? We went back to them, and we had our flag erected on the top of Reichstag. And we're saying, do you want us to come back and have our banner erected where you are landlords, where you believe to be landlords? If this is not desirable, we are telling you, leave us alone. We do not have any desire to wage a war, to occupy territories. We don't need it. Larry, you made a valid point when you said that the Great Patriotic War, which you call the Second World War, and we call it the Great Patriotic War, because we were fighting for our fatherland, and our losses were 27 million lives in that war. Can we afford losing 27 million people in the modern world so that we could have our flag erected on top of Reichstag once again? No, we do not want it. This is why we are not moving at a faster pace. This is why we are not leaping forward to occupy whole states. We don't need that. We have prepared ourselves to wage that war. If you force us to enter into, you would not be able to fight. Why? Because being surrounded by the NATO bloc, almost surrounded, we are able to keep our borderline and to have a contact line, a battlefield across the entire extent and entire length of that contact line. If you want to play a tug of war with us, do you think that it is the entirety of our resources? No, that's not true. We have sufficient resources. If someone wants a repetition, and if someone wants to live through the experience of their forefathers, they will get our response. Once again, we are unwilling to have a war with anyone. We do not want to seize anything from anyone. We want nothing from Germany, France, or Poland. We do not need their land. We want nothing from the United States. It's you who want to take something from us. The difference between us lies there. And another thing, if you want to take something, if you, as decent people, could tell us we are fighting against them because we want to take this and that from them, but when you simultaneously say, look at how bad Russians are, how horrible they are, they want to take everything from us. Now we will have to go to war. Hold on. What is your honor? What is your decency? Where are the institutions that were established after the Second World War? Where is the United Nations? Where is the Security Council? Why are they being used as tools of your deep state, who is using them to push through the agenda and to start hostilities rather than stop them? The world has reached a situation when it has to stop. We need to establish new organizations who would not be used as leverage by the United States and the deep state. We need organizations who would have a real impact on other states and on other people, so that they do not cross each other's borderlines, so that they do not attack each other, so that they do not take advantage of any such organization. Because today you're waging a war against us across the board, in every sphere, even in sports. If you do not allow our sportsmen to raise our flag and to play our hymn where they won the first places, you are trying to violate our interests everywhere where it is possible, so that we could go down on our knees morally. But we are saying, stop. We are Russians, and we are not going to bend. We are not going to stand on our knees in front of anyone. If needed, we are ready to go till the end. If you do not want a war where Russia uses all its forces and all its capacity, then in such case we are ready to extreme measures. As Vladimir Putin said, why do we need the world if there is no Russia there? And this is an answer to all your questions. We do not need a world without Russia. We are not ready to oversee that. Think about that. What would you do if you were in our shoes? And as he himself added, but if the situation is like that, we'll go to paradise and our friends will just die.
Let me say because we've run out of time, they want to close out, but let me say one thing. The world needs Russia. They need Russia for several reasons. Russia shows how to come out of economic chaos, to build up society, to make the lives of people better. Russia shows, as you've taught me, my friend, it's not a zero-sum game where I have to win and you have to lose. It's like going to a Georgian restaurant. We all eat. We're all full. And particularly the message of peace that Russia brings, because of what happened in Chechnya. Most countries that are rent asunder with such a civil war can't get rid of the hatred. And yet the Russians have shown, not only do we get rid of the hatred, but we bring men like Alaudinov, who's a hero of Russia, and a genuine hero that all admire. So let me just say, as an American, I'm trying to get my countrymen to recognize we have a lot to learn from Russia.
That's true. That's true. And you know why? I can say one thing to you. The Chechen Republic is a phenomenon in the modern world. Today, the Chechen Republic is the most patriotic region in Russia in terms of the mood. People are telling stories that there was genocide in Chechnya, that and this was done. I can say one thing. Genocide, who was to blame for the genocide? When the Chechen conflict was launched, there were 50 special services from foreign states being active in Chechnya. I have a question. When someone says that Russians were fighting against Chechens, I say that's not true. We, as Chechens, we started fighting against the Dudayev family before Russian soldiers entered the region. It turns out that Chechen people wanted to get rid of that yoke that they were imposing on us, like in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan. It is no secret where American food was, where Americans set their food. Look at those countries where America tried to bring its democracy. Do you see any peace there? When America entered those countries 20 or 30 years ago, you can see chaos and blood there still. Russia went to Chechnya and it brought order to Chechnya. Take a look at Chechnya. Chechnya is a flourishing region that is called Russian Switzerland. A question. How come? How could it happen? Russia, that is being demonized in the United States and Europe, and it brought peace and order on its territory. We as Chechens are Muslims, and Russia does not prevent us from following our rituals, traditions, and habits. Russia does not prevent us from having two official languages, Russian and Chechen. And of course, it is mutual. Our response is mutual. And we as Chechnya is the peak, is the spear of Russia. How can I defend? How cannot I defend the country that makes me feel like that, and that makes me feel part of this great state, great power? Look at those countries where America set foot. Are the residents, inhabitants of those countries ready to fight for the United States? Can you name at least one country? Everywhere Americans are hated. Israel is hated everywhere because Israel is sowing chaos, because the United States is standing behind it, the big father, the big daddy, and everywhere. And again, I'll repeat it. Let me stop and take a pause. We are no enemies to American people. I said it last time. American people are like Russian people. Each American citizen would like to have a job, would like to have a house, would like to have children, would like to have proper life, except for people who are in those satanic communities, LGBT. That small group has conquered the United States and Europe. They are managing and governing those countries, and they are plunging their own people and other people in chaos. And if we take an average American, is an average American an enemy to a Russian or a Chechen? Of course not. Why do I need an American citizen who is trying to feed his family and is growing wheat? I can only respect him for that labor. And who is waging a war against us? Deep state. And it turns out that it is the government of the United States, the government of European countries that are members of the NATO bloc, and they are unleashing wars to make the rich even richer, those who are sponsoring those wars and investing money in them. This is the essence. This is why we are appealing to American citizens and Europeans to do everything possible to stop their tyrants. We do not want to go to war with you. We do not want to seize anyone's territories. And initially, what did we ask for? For those years, those Minsk agreements were in effect. Actually, during that period, we did not declare Luhansk or Donetsk as parts of Russia. We said, let them be autonomous autonomous regions. Please do not infringe on the rights of those people. Do not prevent them from speaking Russia. These are Ukrainian territories. But now, once the special military operation was launched, Angela Merkel, when she stepped down, Angela Merkel and Orlando openly said that it took them 8 years of procrastination for Ukraine to get an opportunity to prepare for a war against Russia. How dishonest could they be to openly admit it? And now people are rebuking us, and the people are criticizing us for the war. If we look at Merkel and Orlando, what kind of people were they? Did they lead those countries? No, they were led to power by deep state, and they were just puppets. They were complying with the will expressed by that deep state. Hence, there is a question: do we have to fight against German people? No, we are not going to treat German people as our enemies. Are Frenchmen our foes? No, it is not their fault that the enemies of their states, the enemies of their people, seized power and have taken advantage of their own people to plunge Russia into that chaos, thinking that we are an easy prey. That's it. We do not want a war with anyone. But if we are not left alone, I keep repeating it multiple times, we do not want a war with anyone. But if we are not alone, trust me, we'll go through the end. I always say that someone who knows a war from the inside, who has insider knowledge, a professional military man would never want to go to have a war. Only those pretentious upstart people who have never suffered from war hardships are jumping out and are saying, we need a war. If you look at the German Council, the incumbent Council, and if we look at France, the level of their approval, their ratings are 11 or 13% or even lower. These are rigged results. They want a war. How about people, the population? Do they want a war? Larry, I'd like to add to what you've said regarding whether there is something to learn from Russia. Generally speaking, Russia has a wisdom that we've accumulated, but that wisdom is gained through suffering. This is some food for thought. Just think about sufferings of Russia, external aggressions, epidemics, Napoleon, Hitler, Sweden, Mongols, and going through that, we learned to love, not to hate. Just think about it, how long and how much some people suffered. Well, maybe they don't have our experience, then they need to take a lesson from us. Exactly, says Apti.
Thank you for this time.
General, thank you.
Alexander, thank you. And Brother Pepe.
Thank you, all of
thank
you.
you.
Thank you all
Thank
of you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Товарищ генерал.
Thank you.
And we're